Okay, on today's video, we are looking at our top 12 running backs
Oh boy.
for fantasy this year
Come
and
on.
kind of getting into the nitty gritty of their opportunities and their potential. Do us a favor, go ahead and drop a like to show some love. Subscribe if you like fantasy football. And before you even watch the video, I want you to pause it, comment down below who's a lock in your top 12 that currently ADP, they sit outside of that top
Love that.
12. And by the way, do you want your redraft or best ball teams graded by Badake and myself? Then go ahead and use our code LAND at flockfantasy.com. There's a pinned comment with a direct link that will get you 30% off your membership. And if you choose that Mother Flocker tier, not only will we look at your redraft or best ball team, but you'll also unlock the fantasy hotline, which is a direct access to us for advice. Okay, so typically we'd go tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. The way I broke it down because we're only going to be ranking 12, I put a harsh line on that. Yeah, my RB 13, 14, 15, I really like, but I put a harsh line on my top 12. And the way I viewed it is looking at what's a running back that I would take in the top 3. How many of those would I would take in the top 3 this year in a PPR league? How many would I take in the top 6 that I believe are worthy of top 6? How many do I think are even deserving of the first round, of the second round, and then of the third round of your fantasy drafts? And of course, from this perspective, I'm viewing it from a 12-man league. So I'm not sure how you set yours up, Badaki. But we can have a look maybe if you did it differently to how yours are set up after. But in my third round, again, in my top 12, there's more running backs I feel are worthy of being drafted in the third round. But that's the first time I would personally be drafting Breece Hall. I wouldn't touch Breece Hall in the second round at this very moment. And that's just because we don't have many examples outside of Adrian Peterson of a running back tearing their ACL, coming back the next year, and being worthy of a second round pick. You know, Saquon Barkley, I know you're a Giants fan, Badaki. To me, he probably wasn't worth the ADP the year he came back from his ACL. We can certainly say the case with J.K. Dobbins. I know that was a more significant injury, but just there is more history of it being wise to avoid running backs coming back from an ACL than it is to bet on them with such an important pick. So I'm not out on him. And look, if he starts playing in the preseason and we see him really full go by the coaching staff, I'll definitely move him up into being a first round pick. But at this very moment, rankings are fluid, but I wouldn't touch him until the third round. And I'm also doing that in best ball drafts. I'm not touching him until the third round. And I also feel like there's a realistic chance that the Jets are one of those teams that add a vet running back, right? They make the most sense to me to add a Zeke, to add a Dalvin Cook, a Fournette. So that's just my personal opinion. Another running back I feel like is very well worthy of a third round pick is Travis Etienne. And we could see a lot of people disagree with me on this. That's completely fine. I'll let you say your piece. Maybe you disagree with me as well. But I think often with Travis Etienne, people don't give him the same respect they would for another running back in their first year, right? It's Travis Etienne. This is his second year, and he was underwhelming, and he didn't do this, and he didn't do that. But honestly, how many running backs, because this was Travis Etienne's rookie year in 2022. It really was. How many rookie running backs go out and put over 1,400 all-purpose yards up? They score 5 touchdowns. They're wildly efficient, over 5.1 yards per attempt. One of the best rushing yards over expected per attempt. Like he was efficient in every area. He wasn't great on the goal line. I'll give people that. But as a rookie, I think he absolutely was very impressive. 45 targets. I expect that number to go up. I know Tank Bigsby is there. If you believe that Tank Bigsby is the same talent as Travis Etienne, then we're just not going to see eye to eye, right? I think Bigsby will play a role. That's the backup reliever role. He'll get 35% of the workload because no running back is getting what Travis Etienne got last year outside of like Josh Jacobs, which, you know, that's not healthy long term. So Etienne on an ascending offense, an explosive player. I think he will be utilized in some very fantasy-friendly ways, and I think he's worthy of a third-round pick. If he was truly a rookie and he put up those numbers, I think people would look on him more friendly. But it's just because he had that injury his first year, in my opinion, that people are not so high on him. The other player I think is worthy of a third round pick would be Ramondre Stevenson.
Love it.
You know, I just don't feel like I want to risk a second round pick, which is so important to my fantasy team, on a New England running back. But the third round, I feel much better about that because I already have two pillars to my fantasy team, and then I can look at the upside of what Ramondre can bring me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look, there's at this moment no reason why he shouldn't be an absolute smash, but it's like very difficult to trust New England running backs. So now we'll look at running backs that I think are worthy of being drafted in the second round. That would be Nick Chubb. I think he's going to have a great year. I think that offense as a whole is going to be great.
I like that.
Josh Jacobs, who is coming off, the rushing record. Yes, Jimmy G is going to be there. It's not Derek Carr. I think that impacts Devontae Adams more than Josh Jacobs, in my personal opinion. And Josh Jacobs was very successful last year.
Mm-hmm.
He had the second most rushing attempts in the NFL. Volume is king, and I think Jacobs should have plenty. I also would put Tony Pollard here, who I would be comfortable drafting in the mid-second round. A lot of people aren't. I am. I talked about this on my Twitter pretty recently, but Tony Pollard last year finished as the RB9 in points per game, RB8 overall, and that was splitting the workload with Zeke. Zeke had 16.5 touches per game, while Pollard only had 14.5. Zeke is gone. Maybe he comes back, but regardless, Pollard is going to be a 15, 16, 17 touch per game type of running back. And he's not some small, flimsy running back either. He is worthy of being absolutely a second round pick with the volume that he'll get in the offense that he's in, with the efficiency that he consistently brings. And the other running back I think is worthy of being in the second round is Derrick Henry. There's definitely teams where I'll take Pollard over Henry, but in almost every case, I'm taking Henry over Jacobs and Nick Chubb. And then we go into my tier 3, which are running backs that I believe are worthy of being drafted in the first round. These are all guys who are going to get a ton of volume. Their offenses will be built around the run game, and they will probably be the focal point of their offenses. They'll be the best player probably on their offenses this year. That is Saquon Barkley, volume is king. That is Jonathan Taylor, volume is king. And Bijan Robinson, who I think is probably going to see 300 touches in his rookie season. I think he's well worth a first-round pick. All those guys, I feel like, have very similar opportunities. And then in my top 6, players that I believe are worthy of being drafted in the top 6, that would be Austin Eckler.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my top 3, that would be Christian McCaffrey. Both of these players scored over 20 points per game last year. I have more concerns around Eckler than I do around CMC. I think CMC will be the focal point of his offense. I don't know what to think of Eckler at this moment. Again, well worthy of a top 6 to 7 pick, but there was a little bit of a disagreements between him and the team on contracts. They didn't sign him long term. Will they be looking with a new offensive coordinator to change his role slightly? Regardless, you have to anticipate some regression, right? He's not going to get 127 targets this year. That's just not going to happen. So I still think he's the RB2 in that offense, which is great, and he's going to get a ton of receptions, but I don't think it's going to be 127 type of receptions. So that's how my top 12 looks right now.
Okay.
Let me know what you agree or disagree with, or even just how maybe you have yours, kind of ranked. And I will just say, I'm sorry if my nose is stuffy, guys. I'm dealing with the flu, sinuses, all that different stuff. I'm trying my best to push through it, but I might sound a little bit weird at the moment.
No, you're good. All right. I'll start from the top. Obviously, CMC, I'm right there with you. Austin Eckler, I'm right there with you. And I think this is where we see our differences right here, right now, right next to Austin Eckler. I do believe Derrick Henry is deserving to be next to Austin Eckler in my top 6. He is one of the 3 running backs I believe are truly deserving of being in a top 6, even top 8 pick in your redraft leagues. I mean, last year, literally almost 350 attempts on the ground, over 1,500 yards, almost averaging nearly just under 19 fantasy points per game. Derrick Henry is going to continue to get this workload. I still believe he's going to be the focal point of this offense. I know Treylon Burks is geared for a big year, but the run game it is key for this offense, and they probably are going to open up the passing game. But I think Derrick Henry is going to continue to at least finish as a top a top 5 running back without a doubt. For
Okay.
me, top 3. So that's where we see the difference here. In my rankings, I do have Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, and Saquon Barkley. The only difference is that they're swapped around.
Okay.
Swap Saquon for Bijan, and then swap Bijan for Jonathan Taylor. That's
Okay.
exactly how
So you
I.
would take Bijan last of those three.
Yes, right now I would. I'm really struggling still with Jonathan Taylor in this offense. I think there is a conversation to have Bijan over JT, especially with Anthony Richardson being here, maybe vulturing some touchdowns, whatever the case may be. But this could change as we get closer into the season. Obviously, where we are at the end of June as we are recording this, so I can definitely see myself changing that. Okay, now my other one, it would definitely be actually my second round is kind of actually the same. Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb. All
Okay.
these guys are right aligned here. I really like every single one of them. I think if there is one that I can potentially see finishing first in this second round, I think that's Nick Chubb. Nick
Okay. So
Chubb.
you would draft him ahead
I
of
think
the rest.
I think once again another conversation that could potentially be having where I can see him.
Okay.
I can see him being a top 8 guy here over Tony Pollard and Josh Jacobs. I mean, he finished RB6 this past year, over 300 attempts, 1,500 yards. I think he's going to continue here, especially with his offense becoming even better. Yes, he may get less attempts, but I think maybe the touchdowns, we could be seeing a lot more touchdowns from Nick Chubb, especially with Deshaun Watson taking them into the red zone there. And in tier 3, or technically last tier, round 3, excuse
Third
me,
round. Yep.
we see the same. Now, one person I do want to talk about that I do believe I potentially could see him being in my top 12 if Breece Hall is not ready, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay.
That is maybe that's a hot take, maybe it's not. But if hypothetically Breece Hall done for the season, he's not going to be the guy. We've seen the history with Saquon Barkley. He's not going to return the ADP. Who's your next person up? Because for me, that's Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy that was drafted in the top 12, a top 12 in the NFL draft, a guy that's going to see a lot of work in the air. And this is the PPR opportunity. Now he does have David Montgomery. I do believe he could have an incredible finish like we've seen with Breece Hall. I mean, Breece Hall was on pace to be a top 5, top 8 guy in the running back room, right?
Yeah.
I kind of see that pathway. Yes, he may not get a lot of opportunity on the ground, but I can see him kind of really finishing in the top 12 this year, maybe just outside, but I think there's definitely a conversation of him being right there on the edge for me.
Sure. So for me, there will be one player I would prioritize over Jahmyr Gibbs. If Breece Hall, ends up, let's say reports get worse, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
That would be Najee Harris. I would take Najee Harris, but it's only by one pick.
Yeah.
So I do think they are relatively interchangeable. But let's say Breece Hall's out of the picture, like reports are really bad. Between Najee and Jahmyr Gibbs, I just think there is less competition for Najee than there is for Jahmyr Gibbs.
I agree with that.
A lot of people, like in PPR, Gibbs will be great, and that's what we're talking about. But it's not like he's on his own. Everyone loves Gibbs, and I'm obsessed with Gibbs, so don't get me wrong. But everyone recognizes that the Lions have a very intentional plan with Gibbs, drafting him that early in the first round. But they're also in fantasy tending to ignore the fact that they also brought in David Montgomery in free agency for money when a lot of running backs aren't getting money, right?
Yeah.
So they made 2 intentional moves. A lot of people, I think, are only focusing on the Jahmyr Gibbs move because I think if you look at Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, will the roles be exactly the same? No. But I would say David Montgomery at 225 pounds is probably the guy who's going to take over that Jamal Williams role. And Gibbs is more going to look at a DeAndre Swift plus type of role, right? Might be a little bit more involved in creative ways. So I still think Gibbs is a great pick, but I think that there is more questions on how the touchdowns come than for a Najee Harris, right?
Yeah.
If you're on the goal line, Najee Harris is your guy. If you're on the goal line, what do we do with Gibbs? I mean, is he going to be in there, versus David Montgomery at 200 pounds? I don't
I
know.
hear
I
you.
feel like Monty's going to get more of the goal line opportunities.
I think so
So
as
I do
well.
like both of those guys, but I would just prefer Najee slightly
No,
myself.
yeah, I think so as well. And I think what's so interesting about Gibbs is that I think there's a true conversation and a true pathway. And this may sound absurd, but him like having 7+ targets a game with at least, let's say, 8 opportunities on the ground, right? Nine attempts on the ground. Like that may sound absurd, but I actually believe that's how they're going to utilize him as a pass catching wide receiver / running back, a Debo-esque type of player.
Sure.
Um, in
I hear you. I wouldn't say 8. Did you say 8 targets a game?
once again, I know that sounds absurd, but okay, averaging 8.
To me, I'll just say what I had. Like
game, that's a lot.
I'm thinking 5.5 to 6 targets per game for him, which would put him anywhere from about 92 to about 100. I could realistically, sorry, see that being his ceiling.
Right.
8 targets a game. I mean, that would be more than a lot of your wide receiver ones. You know,
and we saw that with someone like Austin Eckler, which you're right, it's been unrealistic.
But a lot more options on this offense.
Yeah, exactly. A lot more options, a lot more opportunity.
And just quickly, by the way, I talked about this on a video recently, but Montgomery is not a bad pass catcher himself.
No, he's
like
not.
He averages almost 50 targets a year himself. Now he might be playing a different role in Detroit, but anyway, I think both of those running backs can do really well.
Yeah.
I just think there's more questions around Gibbs than there is Najee.
Yeah, and look, not saying I don't like Najee. You're right. They're back to back in my rankings, just the opposite way. Better offensive line, second year coming in with Kenny Pickett. I mean, I'm a massive advocate for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sure. I just think, I guess, Jahmyr Gibbs has the higher upside.
So I think looking at this, the one, we'll take Najee out of here. We'll take Jahmyr out of there because it was just for conversation's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I would have Bijan higher. I would have Tony Pollard higher.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Pollard, to me, when I look at Chubb and Jacobs, Pollard, I think, has the best chance at being like surprise RB1 of those two. I know that sounds crazy, but I think he could have a really good year. And then I think Derrick Henry is where we really, really see it differently. Like he is the main difference points I would say you and I have.
Yeah.
And I'll just quickly say, I would not touch him in the first 6 picks. I know you feel differently. I'll just quickly say why. The Titans, new GM, right? Same coach. I think they're well aware of their limitations as a team long term. And I think they're well aware that they cannot build around a 30-year-old Derrick Henry next year if they intend to actually compete. Yes, I think Derrick Henry will be important, but also I think the drafting of Tajay Spears indicates to me that maybe we don't see 400 attempts this year for Derrick Henry. And maybe this is, maybe he just keeps chugging along and it's unlimited touches. But as soon as the year comes where his touches are even brought back by, let's say 30%, you will lose any sort of top 5 ceiling because really he is a volume play. He's always been a volume play. A lot of, 1 to 2 yard runs, and then 1 or 2 times a game, you get that 50-yard breakout. So I don't know. He's just concerning to me. He's a ticking time bomb. Maybe it doesn't blow up this year, but it will blow up at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's where we probably see the most different.
I guess one thing I'll say just to close it is that he's not even going in the first. A lot of people, I'm the one taking him in the first. But normally you can get him at the end of the second. I would say sometimes early third if he's really falling. People are really liking Tony, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs over Derrick Henry right there. And I think a lot of people are hesitant. So if you're like me that loves Derrick Henry, let him fall. Grab a wide receiver early and then see how that works out. Or come in the mock drafts and see how it truly pans out with us as we go live every single week. So definitely check that out as well.
Yeah. So, we'll break it up into timestamps so you guys can see my rankings, Badake rankings, and then, our, I guess, debates, points of conversation, maybe. I don't know. Do us a favor, drop a like to show some love. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And, if you're going to, I already know there's going to be people who are going to be commenting like, why the hell did Aaron Jones die? Right? Did Joe Mixon die? Like, guys, we tried to keep it very, close to top 12. We wanted to give almost no wiggle room there. We still like those players. We just had to draw a line somewhere. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.